start again. It's a rich thing.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Bull Show, aka Aidan, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about the potential suitors for Zach LaVine in free agency. At the end of the day, there are so many rumors and so many people discussing Zach LaVine going to their team, going to this team, going to that team, and potentially remaining on the Chicago Bulls as well. So we're going to be discussing all of those rumors, everybody that's been saying stuff about Zach LaVine, and whether or not it's realistic to go to any of the teams that I'm going to mention in this video. I'm going to give you some spoilers now. Some of them are very unrealistic, but I've heard a lot of rumors about them, and some rumors are very realistic and could potentially happen if we're not careful. This is the type of video where the Chicago Bulls should be looking at the competition that they face and wondering whether or not they're viable threats. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls' likelihood of keeping Zach LaVine. Is it a positive one? Is it a negative one? Can it be done? And overall, would you like to see it happen as well? All of them are very important. Before I get any further, I do have to say we do have the advantage over every other team if we're going to give Zach LaVine a max contract. I believe we're the only team that can offer him a 5-year deal, where other teams will have to offer him a 4-year deal in order to secure Zach LaVine's signature. Also, again, if he doesn't deliver, or if he doesn't get that 5-year deal and he signs to a random team, we don't get any assets in return, and he signs to a random team on a 4-year deal, he's potentially losing $50 million. That could potentially be very hard for him to actually secure back with another max contract down the line. That all comes down to if Zach LaVine can actually deliver on that max contract, which we'll have to wait and see if he'll be able to do. So any team that we want to do a business with, in my opinion, will most likely, for Zach LaVine's best interest, if he doesn't want to stay in Chicago, will look for a sign and trade option. Because in a sign and trade, we could sign Zach LaVine on a max deal worth 5 years and his max contract, and we can trade into another team so they get 5 years of Zach LaVine on that max contract, and we get assets in return. I think that's best suited for us. Obviously best suited for other teams as well. But ultimately, I wouldn't want to leave Zach LaVine for another team. I'd like to keep Zach LaVine here. But if that's just not an option, a sign and trade would be best for everybody involved, in my opinion. So we'll just have to wait and see what Zach LaVine's decision will be. But here are some of the teams that I've heard and whether or not they're likely or not to get Zach LaVine in the offseason. First, I'm going to talk about the Golden State Warriors. This, in my opinion, is the most unlikely out of all scenarios revolving around Zach LaVine. In my opinion, the Golden State Warriors do not need Zach LaVine, and Zach LaVine doesn't need the Golden State Warriors. I think they are not really similar in their playing style. I think the Golden State Warriors right now, the assets that we would probably want in return for Zach LaVine, are all going to retire in Golden State, in my opinion. I think Stephen Curry, untouchable in every sense of the word, going to retire in Golden State. Draymond Green, their leader, their heart and soul, probably going to retire in Golden State. And obviously Klay Thompson, who said numerous times he wants to retire in Golden State. I don't see any of those guys being available. So you have to look at the other options. Maybe you could get a Wiseman in there. He has some potential that we could use, especially in the center position. You could talk about Poole, but I don't think they're going to be willing to give him up either. I just don't think it makes sense, and I don't see why either team would want each other, in all honesty. So, and again, the Golden State Warriors are potentially going to be a team that could make the NBA Finals this year, depending on how well they do in their series that's coming up with, obviously, the Grizzlies and whoever wins the Dallas and the Suns series. All of that's very intriguing, all of that's very interesting, and they're in a battle right now. I just don't personally think they would need a Zach LaVine to really go further in the NBA in terms of what they already have. I really don't think they would need him, but at the end of the day, I could be wrong, but I feel like this is one of the more unlikely options. Next, I want to talk about the LA Lakers. Now, look, every free agent that you could possibly imagine is linked to the Los Angeles Lakers. It's always, literally, every free agent you could possibly think of will be linked with LA every year. It's that type of team. They have that big of a pool. They have that big of, I guess, a franchise and their fans as well, that they're going to be a bunch of rumors whether it's realistic or unrealistic. Here's the thing that I have with the LA Lakers and why I think they're an unrealistic option for Zach LaVine. One, their team is capped out at the moment, and 2, they're one of the older teams in the NBA, which means the assets that we would want to sign and trade for them is going to be very difficult for, I guess, the LA Lakers to actually get done by the Chicago Bulls standards. That's my personal opinion. The only way I really see Zach LaVine going to an LA team, or the LA Lakers per se, is for the Lakers to do sign and trades with other teams, or just potentially just trade their assets to other teams, and for Zach LaVine to sign a max deal if they can get a max deal available for him, but only 4 years, which means Zach LaVine is going to not get his 5th year, because I don't think a sign and trade with the Chicago Bulls will work for the LA Lakers. Because in the end, who do they have that the Chicago Bulls would want? Do we want Russell Westbrook? In my opinion, I think the Bulls front office knows more than enough to kind of stay away from Russell Westbrook at this point in time. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I still think he has, depending on the team he goes to, a lot to offer. But we have so many point guards on this team. We don't need to add another one, especially when our starting point guard, when he's healthy, is probably one of the better defenders in the league. So I don't see us needing a Russell Westbrook type player on this team. But outside of that, who else do they have that they're willing to give up to the Chicago Bulls for them to get Zach LaVine? Because the only real talent that I see there that I would want is Anthony Davis. And in all honesty, I don't see how it makes sense for either team to really get rid of those superstars. I don't see how it suits the Chicago Bulls. Again, we're going to get a player in Anthony Davis that's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, very good offensive player, but at the end of the day, hasn't really improved that much over the years and is an injury-prone player. And Zach LaVine has had his injuries of his own. He goes to the LA Lakers. He's not better than Anthony Davis. So that makes their championship level, if Anthony Davis does stay healthy, a lot less significant in my eyes. So I don't see that making sense for the Lakers. I don't see that making sense for the Bulls as well. So other than that, if anybody's saying Taylor Horton-Tucker, I think we're massively undervaluing what Zach LaVine actually is, because I don't think anybody else on that team is actually a viable option for a sign and trade with the Chicago Bulls. And I think we lose as a fan base and as an organization. Any other player besides Anthony Davis, we will lose that trade to the LA Lakers. It's one of the worst times, or one of the worst sides when you're older to actually do sign and trades with, because a lot of your assets are not as significant or not as highly valued as they are when they're a little bit younger. Maybe there is some potential to them as well. So all in all, I don't think Zach LaVine will go to the LA Lakers, but again, they do have a massive pool. You can't deny that they're one of those teams that I think most people in their lifetime has dreamt about going to. But at this point in time, it's very difficult for LA Lakers, Zach LaVine, I guess, relationship to form. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, LeBron just seems to make miracles out of nowhere when it comes to these types of moves. The next team I want to talk about is Philadelphia. Now, I think Philadelphia, in terms of the fit with Zach LaVine and Philadelphia, makes a lot of sense. James Harden is that point guard type of player that can make Zach LaVine's shots much more wide open than what they currently are on the Chicago Bulls. He has so much pressure on him, as well as having an MVP caliber center next to Zach LaVine as well in Joel Embiid. I think it's a very, very, very likable team if you put Zach LaVine on Philadelphia. But again, another question has to be asked. Can they actually do a sign and trade, or can they even sign him in general? Because some of their assets are massively overpaid in my opinion. For an example, look, maybe you guys like Tobias Harris, maybe you guys don't like Tobias Harris. At the end of the day, that's not my place to really say I like him or I don't like him. I think he's a good player. But he is making $38 to $39 million until 2024. That is a very hard contract to get rid of for any team. If they're going to have to bring Zach LaVine in my opinion, that's the guy they're going to have to trade. And which team is willing to trade Tobias Harris to get even a much less contract than what he's currently already on? In order to get a contract like Tobias Harris off their list, they're going to have to get an equal contract in my eyes. I don't see Tobias Harris really going anywhere for Philadelphia anytime soon. So who else are they going to get rid of? Are they going to get rid of James Harden? I don't think they're going to get rid of James Harden. They just got him at the end of the day, and they're potentially in a chance to go and win a championship as well. Joel Embiid's an MVP and they're a franchise player. There's no chance in hell they're going to get rid of Joel Embiid either. So Philadelphia doesn't make much sense to me either, even though the look on paper actually looks fantastic for them. I would be very intrigued to see that. But all in all, I don't see that happening for Philadelphia either. And now we're getting to the more realistic teams in my opinion. The first one is the Dallas Mavericks. The thing with Dallas is very intriguing as well. They have a lot of decisions to make in their free agency ventures as well. Obviously, Jalen Brunson, who's having an incredible playoff performance, in my opinion, through the first and second rounds. He's been very, very decent in my eyes. Potentially, there's a chance that Dallas won't re-sign him. So if that's the case, if they want to go down a different direction than Jalen Brunson, Zach LaVine could definitely be an option for the Dallas Mavericks. I think they have the money to actually offer him a max contract, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, in saying that, maybe a sign and trade can be done to bring a guy like Jalen Brunson to the Chicago Bulls, which I don't know if it works out like that or not. But at the end of the day, it's an intriguing one, and maybe it's one that you don't turn your back off just yet. I obviously think Luka and Zach as a backcourt partnership has great offensive capabilities, but also has a little bit of defensive liabilities as well. And does that really fix the Dallas Mavericks' problem from time to time? I don't necessarily think it does, but again, if they want to go down a different direction, Zach LaVine's an option for them, and it's definitely, in my opinion, a team that we should be looking out for. The next one is the Utah Jazz. Obviously, Utah entered the NBA playoffs with a little bit of a, embarrassing way. They came in and they pretty much got out in the first round. And that Dallas Mavericks team is very talented, in my opinion. But in saying that, I think there's a lot of conversations about blowing that team up. And there's been two players that the Chicago Bulls have been linked to from that exit in the NBA playoffs by the Utah Jazz. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, their two best players. Been linked to the Chicago Bulls players for quite some time. Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic as well. So, with all that being said, is it really realistic for the Utah Jazz to get rid of, Donovan Mitchell? Because I think that's obviously the one we'd have to go after in a sign and trade to bring Zach LaVine in. I think a lot of Utah fans don't necessarily rate Donovan Mitchell that much. From what I've seen on Twitter, that's basically what I'm going off of. He's obviously a talented player. He's very young as well. He has superstar potential. He's been hyped a lot by the media as the next D-Wade type of player, which does make sense in my eyes. But in saying that as well, is it really realistic for them to do that? I've heard, I think, a quote from Donovan Mitchell saying he'd like to stay in Utah. And if I was the Utah Jazz, I feel like swapping Zach LaVine for Donovan Mitchell pretty much gets you the same place. I think they're very similar type of players. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell has relatively poor shot selection from time to time. I think, obviously, Zach LaVine has the same issues. I think their defense is relatively inconsistent as well, both of those types of players, and they both have really incredible potential, and they both are obviously max contract players in my eyes. But I'm not really sure if Donovan Mitchell is the right answer for the Chicago Bulls either. Is that really the guy that's going to take us to the next level? I'm not too sure about that, but at the end of the day, it's definitely something to keep your eye on. It could be a decision that maybe a tourist wants to pull the trigger on to bring that type of player in here. At the end of the day, I don't know, but if the Utah Jazz are going to be offering Donovan Mitchell for Zach LaVine, I think a lot of people will have to consider that, in my opinion. So we'll wait and see if that's going to be a viable option down the line. Next team I'm going to be talking about is San Antonio Spurs. This is mainly because of Javonte Murray and what he posted about Zach LaVine pretty much. And I think a lot of people from then on really just, started to put that narrative into perspective that Zach LaVine could very well join the San Antonio Spurs. If anybody could get the best out of Zach LaVine in my eyes, it's one of the best coaches of all time in Greg Popovich. He promotes a team-based, style. And he's made guys like DeMar DeRozan adjust to that style very well. So I do see Zach LaVine getting a lot out of his career in San Antonio. However, they did make the play-in this year, but they're not at the level of Chicago Bulls in terms of winning. I think they're in a different environment. They're in a different situation right now where they're focusing on younger talent, trying to develop these guys before they go and get their superstar player. I don't think jumping the gun and getting Zach LaVine necessarily helps San Antonio win the championship, which I think the ultimate goal is. So with all that being said as well, again, they can offer him a max deal. I also think that they don't necessarily have to do a sign and trade to bring Zach LaVine either, because they can offer a 4-year max deal without really giving up anything if Zach LaVine wants to leave this team. So it's an interesting one for the San Antonio Spurs. I'm just not sure if that's the right option for Zach or the Spurs, in all honesty. Very similar to the Warriors. I don't think they need each other at this point in time. But all that being said, another team to look out for. And if they are really down and want to get a superstar type of player or get a guy that could potentially even improve upon Greg Popovich's system and develop in the Greg Popovich system, Zach LaVine could be a very decent shout for San Antonio. The last team I'm going to talk about is the Portland Trail Blazers, which in my opinion is the most realistic option for Zach LaVine. And I've had a couple of people suggest to me, even before these rumors began, that Zach LaVine could go to Portland. But these Portland rumors are appearing left, right, and center at the moment. So in my opinion, there is probably something going on there. And a lot of teams are going to be, I guess, interested to see what they could probably get out of Portland for them to sign Zach LaVine, and even for ourselves in the sign-in trade. I've heard things like we can get Joe Ingles, Josh Hart, and Simons from their team, which is an interesting conversation to be had. But obviously, when it comes to Portland, I think it's the most realistic attempt. Again, if they're going to try and, I guess, quickly develop and not necessarily go through a rebuild, Zach LaVine is the type of player you're going to have to bring in to pair up with Damian Lillard. In my eyes, if the Portland Trail Blazers are going for a rebuild, then I don't see the point in having Damian Lillard there, because by the time the rebuild is successful, Damian Lillard will probably be past his prime, not necessarily the player that he is at this point in time. A lot of people will have that conversation. A lot of people will ask that question. But when you're looking at trying to skip the rebuild in general and maybe going for a different direction, Zach LaVine could definitely be an option that they can pair with Damian Lillard and see how far that gets. At the end of the day, I might be controversial in saying this. I think Zach LaVine and Damian Lillard will be a better, I guess, backcourt partnership than Damian Lillard and CJ, because I felt like Damian Lillard and CJ kind of played each other's positions. They both really wanted to be a point guard on that team, and I don't see Zach LaVine as needing to be a point guard on any team really. I know he does it for the Chicago Bulls, but it doesn't mean that he has to do it with Portland as well, especially when he has an elite scorer next to him that does play that point guard position. He can be more of an off-ball guard in any system, in my opinion. So I think that could definitely be an option for Zach LaVine. I think it's close to his home as well. So at the end of the day, I think that's the team that we really need to watch out for, the Portland Trail Blazers. With all the rumors that are happening at the moment, I think that's a little bit of a concern in my opinion. If Portland comes in with a max contract offer, or Portland want to come to the Chicago Bulls and do a sign and trade, I honestly see that team being the one that could probably get Zach LaVine into the Portland Trail Blazers. And I don't want that to happen at the end of the day, but we have to be open to all options, all avenues, all aspects. And I think Portland is definitely a very intriguing option for Zach LaVine. And I also think Portland probably have a little bit more to offer than some of the other teams, while also having the ability to actually sign Zach LaVine on a max deal regardless. So very interesting in my opinion. A sign and trade with Portland might be a very interesting one. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Outside of the Chicago Bulls, obviously, I've already talked about that before, so I'm not going to mention our own team here. But these are the teams that, in my opinion, I've seen rumored around getting Zach LaVine. Some of them highly unrealistic, some of them moderately realistic, some of them just don't make sense for either team. And then obviously you get some of the realistic ones that could potentially be options. So let's wait and see what free agency has to offer in regards to Zach LaVine. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in another Chicago Bulls video, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.